Hello, hello. We are live. I'm coming to you live from the south of France. I am back. And today's live stream is all about my trip back to the States and the meetup that I had in Richmond, Virginia. And I can't wait to debrief this, unpack that, share my insights, and get some thoughts from some of the people who attended in person. So, before we do that, I would like to see if everybody can hear me. And if you can, um, I see some people commenting. If you can hear me, tell me where you are joining from. I see one, two, Roi Soleil joining. Thank you for joining. I checked out your YouTube channel and the imagery is just fabulous. Thank you for sharing that with me. Um, Yes, okay, great, great. And I see Rough Rider has joined. Patricia has the best chats. Thank you. Thank you. Way to boost my ego. AGL says, I'll be curious to hear your thoughts. I haven't been in the US in 5 years and scheduled to visit the end of the summer. Yes, it'll be interesting. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts once you get back. All right. Hi, Dion. Good to see you. And from Jura, okay. Hi, Southern Rose Tia D. This is kind of a reunion. You were at the meetup in Richmond, Virginia, and I was so glad to get a chance to meet you in person. ES is calling in from the DMV, and JS Pin. Bonjour, Patricia from RVA. Bonjour, bonsoir. This is nighttime for me now. But so, yes, thank you everybody for joining. I am really excited to dig in. Before I do that, I'm going to share with you who I am, just in case you don't know who I am. My name is Patricia Brooks, and I moved to the south of France 6 years ago. And it was something that I felt compelled to do. My intuition drove me to get there. And I left a good paying job to do this. I needed to figure out what my next professional move was going to be. And in order to do that, I moved on my savings. And it was such a life affirming experience. 2.5 years later, I decided I wanted to help other women do exactly what I did because I didn't necessarily know it was possible. I did it when I was 51 years old. Oh, only people who are in their 20s or 30s do this, right? And so I had that going against me, but I did it anyway. I pushed through. And what I thought was it would be really nice to have a group and a coaching program that helped women like me. And so that's what I did. That's what I do. That's who I am. And I am so glad to be here. All right. So I thought the way that I would work this is I had written down some insights from right after the meetup, some things that really spoke to me about the meetup. And I wanted to share those with you. And then I have a napkin that some of the meetup attendees asked me questions they want to, can you see this is a Starbucks napkin, have me answer. And if you have questions when I start to answer questions, you can go ahead and type them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. All right. So I'm going to jump right in. So my meetup in Richmond was all because of Janice in France. And I don't know if you are familiar with Janice in France, but she is a woman who a couple of years ago, at the age of 70, I believe, moved to France right outside of Paris. And she is a YouTuber and she's got quite a following. So if you're not familiar with her, you might want to go and check her channel out. Well, anyway, a couple of months ago, she was being interviewed by somebody she had met at a meetup she'd done when she went back to the States. And I thought, oh, that's a really good idea. I think I'm going to do that. And because I can have a tendency to kind of, keep to myself. But she did it. I thought, oh, this would be a great way to see who shows up. And I did it, and I'm so glad I did because it was a great turnout. Now, like anything that I plan, like a social event that I plan, I always have this fear that nobody is going to show up, right? You plan a party, you plan an event, and then you show up and you wonder, is anybody going to show up? Well, when I got to the Starbucks, a friend of mine was already there, so I knew I wouldn't be sitting in a Starbucks for 2.5 hours by myself. But soon thereafter, people came and they they joined me. People I didn't know, people who didn't know me even 24 hours earlier. They'd somehow gotten information from my YouTube channel that, oh, I was going to be in Richmond on February 25th. And lo and behold, that's where they were. And they showed up. And then there were former coworkers and friends that showed up too that I wasn't expecting it. So it was an amazing, amazing experience. So that kind of paints the scene. So the first insight or takeaway I got was something that Linda said. She came all the way down from Washington, D.C., I believe, and she drove and she asked a friend to ride with her because she didn't want to do that alone. And the reason that she came all that way was something that I had shared with you all in one of my videos, and that was the saying, wherever you go, there you are. And it was really all about the idea that if you are a homebody now, and if you're not going out and meeting new people now, what makes you think that once you move to a foreign country where you're really out of your element, that you are going to all of a sudden, have this skill of connecting and being sociable and all of that. And so she took that to heart and she said, well, I kind of like to be a loner and, keep to myself. But I remembered you saying, wherever you go, there you are. And so I decided I was going to find a way to get there, ask a friend to ride with me. And she came all the way 2 hours down 95 to be at this meetup. And I am so glad she did. I'm so glad I got to meet her in person. She's an amazing woman. So that was one takeaway, that people are listening to what I'm saying. And that was really powerful. It's like, oh yeah, I did say that, didn't I? And that somebody is taking that to heart really, really spoke to me. So that was the first takeaway. And if there's something, that I've said in a video to you that really spoke to you, that you kind of hear sometimes, in your head as you're maybe thinking about doing the opposite, type that in the chat. I'd love to hear what some of those things are. The second thing has to do with Americans being loud. So we took over the Starbucks. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was pretty slow, so it wasn't that big a deal, but we were a little bit loud. And somebody mentioned, I don't know who it was, mentioned that, Americans can be so loud, whereas French people are much more reserved and quiet. You probably wouldn't see this in France. And I thought to myself, yeah, probably wouldn't see this in France. And if we were doing this in France, we'd probably be really standing out. But one thing I do want to say is I think it depends on where you are too in France. I know that when I'm taking the train from Paris to Perpignan, there is a line where, once we hit the Valence train station, if I'm coming north to south, I hit Valence, then the train starts to be a little bit noisier. And when I go the opposite way, it starts to get quieter north of Valence. So I think culturally, there are different areas that can be a little bit louder. So, but I thought, oh yeah. So whoever said that was pretty accurate. So, and one to Roi Soleil said, that is right. Yes, French people are more reserved, a little bit quieter. Yes, so that's confirmation to that observation. The third thing that I kind of took away from the meetup, from what somebody was saying, was, many of us at the meetup were looking to move to France, and so and some of us didn't really have this really solid reason that you could kind of put your finger on, but it was something about France and it felt like a soul calling, right? And I think that was kind of what got me going. That intuition was like, you need to be in a French speaking country. And then later it dialed into France. That really was my soul telling me this is where I needed to be. And I didn't know why, but I found my way here. And, many of the people at the meetup have a similar feeling that that's why they want to move to France or whatever country they're longing to live in. And I think that knowing that if you have a soul calling and being able to listen to it, even if you don't know the how, right? Because I think a lot of times what holds us up, hangs us up, is that we have to know how. We have to know all the 100 steps that we have to take in order to make something happen, instead of saying, okay, this is my aim, this is something I know that is in my blood that I have to do. What's the next step? What is the next step I can take to move in that direction, so that then you can see the path open up before you? So that commonality of that soul calling was something else that I really thought was interesting. Then next on the list is, so, I mentioned that coworkers came to visit, and to me, some of these people I hadn't seen in many, many years. I'd worked with them 20 years ago and hadn't really kept in touch. And so when they walked through the door, it was really surprising how excited I was to see them, and that we could kind of pick back up, and it felt like a homecoming of sorts, right? That we'd had a connection so long ago, we had a shared experience, and that shared experience lasted, over the years, and over the lack of communication, and that felt really powerful to me. And I was so grateful to have that opportunity to catch up with a couple of really old co-worker friends that came through and really surprised me. So that was another takeaway. And one of them, my friend Evie, she is such a wonderful friend and follower. She will comment on my Instagrams, on my YouTubes. And one thing that she said really made my heart smile, right? She said that, and I'm going to read this, that she sees a joy. She sees a joy in me shining through. She says, there's a growth, there's an evolution in you that I really can see. And that felt really good, because from where I was even just 6 years ago, before I made my move abroad, I feel like a completely different person. I definitely have grown. I definitely feel more joyful. I definitely feel less stressed and less worried, even though I don't necessarily know how things are going to play out. I have a trust and a faith that things will take care of themselves. And for her to say that there's a joy in me that shines through, and that she sees so much growth in me, that really was affirming. And affirming to me, but also affirming that somebody else outside of myself could see that and was benefiting, and felt inspired by that. So, and Sharon has joined. Sharon, a former coworker, was at the meetup as well. Yes, it was wonderful to catch up. I'm so glad you joined. It was great. It was a great conversation. Great conversation. So number 6 is the power of social media. All right. Denise showed up, and she said, well, you popped into my feed, and then I heard you were going to be in Richmond, Virginia on the 25th, and here's the 24th. And so I showed up. And the fact that she just happened to see that video that I spoke about, this meetup in, it felt powerful. And it really reminds me, again, it's, that I have this platform, and with that comes responsibility, because people are listening. People are listening to what I say, and taking many of the things I say to heart. So, and that's the final thing, is that people are listening, and that this platform is something that I take very seriously. And I appreciate each and every one of you for showing up, who are here live, but also who may be watching the replay. So I appreciate you so very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So those are the 7 takeaways, insights that I got from the meetup. those of you who are on the call who were at the meetup, if you have something you want to share, something that really stuck with you about the meetup, go ahead and share that in the chat, because I'd like to share that with everybody. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to answer these questions that people ask me at the meetup. And if you have a question that you would like for me to answer, go ahead and feel free to type that in the chat. All right. Want this to be an exchange back and forth. So the first question, I have my glasses on. What would you put in an extra piece of luggage, coming from the US back to France? And this one I had to think about, because early on, the first couple of times I came back to the US and, came back to France, there were certain things that, I just felt like I had to have. But now it just feels like, I've lived without some of these things, or I've adjusted to, new things in France. And so there really wasn't any one thing I felt like, especially this trip, that I wanted to bring back. I will tell you some of the things that were in my suitcase. Grits. I, had some grits, one day when I was in Richmond, and I thought, oh yeah, this would be a nice treat to have when I'm in France. Another thing that I brought back were the different sizes of the Ziploc bags. Because here in France, you can find Ziploc bags, but they're just kind of just a regular size. You don't get the snack sizes. And I really like to be able to, store, food in these nice little bags. And so that's one thing. Another thing that I stock up on when I am in the US is my Mary Kay cosmetics, my skincare products. Now, I used to sell Mary Kay, and I absolutely love that product. And so I will get 2 of my skincare sets. I can get Mary Kay skincare here in Europe, but not in France. They are not independent sales consultants in France. But in Spain, just across the border, 10 minutes from me, I can purchase Mary Kay. And I have a Spanish Mary Kay consultant. But when I have the opportunity to stock up on my, actually my foundation, because that's one thing I can't get there. They don't have a foundation dark enough for me. I stock up. So those are some things that I brought back, but there's not really any one thing that I'm like, I have to have. Oh, there is one thing that I think that I thought about when I was on the train coming back, wearing this old down winter coat that I was just tired of being in. And I thought, oh, Patricia, you were at the LL Bean store. You probably just should have bought a new coat and dumped the one I was in. And I thought, oh yeah, that was a big miss. So, and some clothes too. I think I haven't found my stores here in France. So I tend to like to go back to Loft and find what some things that I really like there. So I hope that answers that question. All right. Southern Rose Tia D says, let me share this. Let me share this. I really enjoyed chatting at the meetup. It's a testimony to the great people that you've magnetized over the years. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, including you. Yes, thank you. And Neon says, I love grits. So do I. They're good. They're really good. Now, some people in France might be saying, what's a grit? What's a grit? It's a breakfast cereal made from corn. So the luggage question was Tia D, Tia Rose, Southern Rose Tia D. That's a mouthful. Yes, I am happy I got to stock up on some things too. And had I planned it better, had I really thought about it, because I did have room in my suitcase for a lot more, but I've gotten I think past that stage. I think it's interesting. Also, somebody asked the question, not at the meetup, about, well, when I go back to the United States, do I have, how does it feel, right? When I go back, because she had a friend who lived abroad, and whenever she goes back to the States, she says, oh, there's this heavy feeling that I have when I go back to the States. And I have to say, this time I felt pretty neutral. I felt pretty okay being in the United States. It's not necessarily some place I want to move back to, but I didn't have a heaviness or a feeling like, oh, I can't wait to get out of here. And so I think that has come over time, feeling like, France is home to me, home for me. Coming back to the States, seeing friends, family, making new friends is a nice thing to be able to do. And I don't necessarily feel like, uh, you know, uh, it's a place I don't want to be. So I thought that was some growth as well. Okay. Sharon says, I was encouraged to live life and not wait. Do it now. Trust the adult children will be fine. That's powerful. That's powerful, Sharon. Do it now. You're not granted tomorrow, and you have a dream in your heart. Do it now. Do it now. I love that. I love that that was your big takeaway from the meetup. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. Here's a question from Mackie Samuels. How do you establish friendships and a sense of community after you relocated to France? It's a process. It's a process, and it takes intention, being intentional. And one of the things that I knew as somebody who has introvert tendencies was that I was going to have to really push myself out of my comfort zone. And there's a meetup group. It's called On Va Sortir, OVS, and it's a website that has different activities. And my first, months here, I was on that all of the time, looking for things to do with other people. And I did that. And one of the first things I did was I went to a laughter yoga class, and I didn't know what laughter yoga was, but I like to laugh. And I thought, oh, I'm gonna try this out and see how it goes. And I went, and it was in Perpignan, but it wasn't in the city center. And so I had to get on a bus and find this place, and got there and joined the class. And it was a really kind of a weird, surreal experience, because I did this 3 or 4 weeks after I moved to France. So I was already feeling a little bit out of, like a fish out of water. But then, you're in a group that you don't know, and you're told to act like a child and, laugh and look at each other in the eyes. And so that was really kind of like a bizarre thing, but it's something I really liked. And so I went back again and again. And finally, 9 months later, I decided I was going to become a laughter yoga instructor. And so I took a class to do that. And so that was one way that I made inroads. But another way was I lost 75 pounds on Weight Watchers. So and there are Weight Watchers here, or there were Weight Watcher meetings here in my region until COVID happened. And so I decided I was going to attend Weight Watcher meetings. And so that was another way, kind of like an instant connection to make inroads. Another thing that I did was I went to a meditation center that had a branch in Richmond, Virginia, but it's an international organization, mindfulness and or heartfulness meditation centers. And they had a branch in Perpignan. So I reached out during one of my scouting trips, and I met up with them, so that when I landed, I had a contact, and I knew who to go to. So it was a little bit easier, stepping out and reaching out and making that connection. So that's a good question. Thank you for asking it. All right, I want to go through some more of the questions from the people who were at the meetup. I'm going to entertain the questions that are in the chat as well. So let's do this. So the next question I have here is, how did you prepare to downsize prior to moving to France? Is it smart to put belongings in storage? And if so, for how long? And I think this ties into the last question that was asked here. What was a last moment decision you made prior to moving to France? Okay, so I had the intention of not shipping anything to France. I had one big suitcase, And then I did decide to ship a big box initially that had my security blanket. It was a blanket that I had given to my mom 2 Christmases before she died, and she would sit on the couch and watch her TV with it. And when she was dying, that was on her bed, and so it's really a memento for me. And so I had that shipped in this big box. So that was something I did. But as I was clearing out my house, I reduced a lot of things, but there were some things I didn't really know what to do. Some things that were, mementos, or things that were my parents, or that I felt, my high chair. I have a Pennsylvania Dutch wooden high chair, finely crafted high chair that was mine when I was a baby, and I had an estate sale and nobody bought it, and so I still had this. And what do I do with that? And so a last minute decision was for me to rent storage, a small storage unit. And I told myself, but I didn't listen. It was going to be for 1 year. And I did that, and that was fine. That allowed me, because initially I hadn't planned on shipping using, putting my stuff on a boat and shipping things. But when I got down to like the nitty gritty, there were some things I just didn't want to part, or didn't know what to do with. And so I stored them. And I eventually wound up shipping them after 2 years in storage, right? And one of the reasons I didn't intend to ship anything was because I thought, oh, it's going to be so expensive. I'm not going to be able to afford it. And so I was just trying to get rid of everything. But had I looked into that sooner, I would have seen, oh, well, yeah, this is something I could afford and I'm just going to do. Because the cost was the storage for 2 years, which, was probably as much or more than the shipping. It was the import taxes, because in France, if you move to France, you can ship your household items, but you have to do it in the first year. Otherwise, you're going to pay import taxes. So I'm paying import taxes on, these things that just don't really have any value other than sentimental value. So the question is it smart to store, and for how long? Well, that's really a personal decision. I'm glad that I did, because as time was winding down and I was unsure of what to do with those things, that gave me space to just concentrate on getting on the plane and moving to France. Had I listened to myself and said, okay, yeah, it's 1 year. When I go back in a year, I'm going to figure out what to do with my stuff and get rid of it. That would have been a smart thing to do. But I didn't. I'm like, I don't feel like dealing with that right now. And I just kind of, kicked it down the road. And then what happened was, when I did decide I was going to get rid of it, that was when COVID hit, and it caused me to be, stranded in the US for 3 months instead of the 3 weeks I was there. So, because I was fooling with my stuff. So I don't know if that answers that second part of the question, but that is my experience in terms of storage and stuff. How did I prepare to downsize? So as soon as I knew that I was going to move abroad, as soon as I had this inkling that this was something I wanted to do, even though I hadn't applied for a visa, even though I really wasn't sure how it was going to be, I started to look at the things in my house differently, and what I was buying at the store differently, because I thought, oh, well, if I have this here, or if I buy it, I'm going to have to figure out what to do with it when I move. And so the downsizing started early, but the thing is, it just I didn't seem to get rid of enough stuff soon enough without having to store. So I do have a video on my channel about that downsizing and how to deal with it. If you're sentimental, how to move through that. So that might be an interesting video for the person who asked this question to watch. Okay. And let's see what we got in the chat. Anne is asking, do you eat egos for breakfast? I'm like, yeah, I eat eggs all the time. Egos, when I'm in the United States, no. What I used to, that was a staple when I was growing up. I have egos all the time, and sometimes my mom would, have us have hot dogs. Right? She always believed that protein was a good thing to have. So, but I didn't have any egos with this past trip. So yeah, not now, not anymore. Um, and then another question, one to Soleil says, do you like to discover all the different places that France has to offer? I do. I have not done a good job of it. I intend to do more of that. Last year, I went to Normandy, went north of Paris for the first time. I was like, I got to check this place out. And so there are lots of other places that I'd like to visit. I'd like to visit Bordeaux. Oh, last year also, my group, the Carefree Expat Incubator group, had an in-person meetup, and that was in Marseille. And that was really good. I didn't really know what to expect, but it was enjoyable all around. The people seemed so friendly, a great place to visit. So yes, it's on my other places in France are on my radar. I want to get out to Nice too, because I call that the other south of France, because it's kind of far from where I am. And people have this general term of, oh, I live in the south of France, but where that could cover a lot of areas. All right. And then the final question I have from the folks at the meetup is, how do you prioritize your social life? Meetups, walks, classes, meals, special interests. So this is something that has, I think, become a little bit more challenging as my business has picked up, as I've started a business, right? When I first came here, I was kind of just exploring, and, doing things for me was something that I had a lot of time to do. And as things have picked up with my business, I have to definitely be intentional with that. I know over the last couple of months, my Spanish class, I take a Spanish class here in my village, and I love it. I absolutely love it, because there is this intersection between learning a new language, Spanish, in a French language, and the community that I am making in that class, because it's just an opportunity to kind of share. We're learning a new language, we have the opportunity to talk. Whereas with some of my qigong class, which is like Tai Chi, we're up and we're moving, but there's not that interaction, that engagement. So I really like my Spanish class. But over the last couple of months, it's been really hard to find the time, number one, to do the homework, but number two, to commit to going on Monday night for an hour and a half to sit when I think, oh, I've got other work to do. And I have gotten so much better. I am American, and that go do was something that I feel like I struggled with in the beginning, and then I kind of settled into, oh yeah, I like this, sabbatical life. And then I picked up a business, and I was like, well, yeah, starting a business and making it work, you kind of have to be a little bit more driven. And so that's coming back in, but it's being intentional. And saying, this is important. This is as important as building my business, because of the mental health aspect of the isolation. Additionally, just working with, I met a new friend back in the fall at an entrepreneur meetup. And it was a situation where people went and they knew each other. And so they were kind of, being in cliques. And so I'm standing at a table alone, and she comes over to me, and we start having a conversation. One thing leads to another. We exchange information. She's a massage therapist, and we decide we both enjoy hiking. And so once a month now we go on a hike. But to do that, I'm reaching out to her, or she's reaching out to me. And it's something that I know is a two-way street. It's something that, even though I might not feel like I have the time to do it, I take, one day a month and hang out with her, go on a hike. So it's really just finding that balance and recognizing that this is so that, having that social life, so that I'm not isolated, is important to my mental health. So I hope that answers that question as well. All right. So let's see what else we got going on in the chat. All right. Anne is asking, can you tell us about the healthcare in the US compared to France? How much people do they pay to have full coverage, cover assurance, hospital, dentist? I don't necessarily know that I can tell you that. I can tell you what it was like before I realized that I could get the carte vitale, which is the national health plan, and what I paid out of pocket based compared. Well, I don't even know what out of pocket would be in the US, but there's the deductible that you pay when you go to see your primary care physician. So when I was paying out of pocket, when I was ignorant and did not know that I should apply for the carte vitale, I would go to my doctor, my general practitioner, and I'd pay maybe $29 for a doctor's visit. If I went to a specialist, that might be a little bit more. That might be um, 40 $40, $45. For blood work. You know, I'd had blood work taken. Um, and that was about $40 as well. My prescriptions paying out of pocket was, you know, I had 2 prescriptions and it was like no more than $12 a month. So it was really affordable, not on the health plan. So now I have the carte vitale, and that is, I pay into that based on what I earn in my business, and they take the social charges out of that. And that is, so the social charges are kind of lumped together. So I can't really tell you what that is. But the system is, if I have a slow month, I'm just paying a percentage of what I've earned from that. So I think that that's pretty fair, you know, for somebody who is just getting a business up and running. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's, oh, and I have Mutual, which is a supplemental insurance. So the carte vitale covers about 70% and Mutual covers the rest, or just about the rest of that. So, and for the Mutual I have is about, I'm trying to think, I pay, you know, so much at the end of the year. I'm just trying to parse out which big bill is what. I think it's about 900 to maybe 950 euros, so maybe $1,100 a year for the supplemental insurance. So that kind of gives you some idea. Hope that helps, Anne. All right. Ah, France is paradise. I'm right there with you. All right. Let's see what else we got. Oh, I'm talking about French healthcare. You want to know in U.S. It's expensive. Can some people who are in the U.S. how much are you paying for insurance in the U.S.? The question was how much people pay in the U.S. All right, I'm going to wait for some comments to come in, and I'm going to share those. It's a lot. There's a lot. Which is why a lot of people just don't have health insurance, because it's really at times not affordable. All right. Gills Gap Girl, right? Did France start a nomad visa program? No, not to my knowledge. They don't have a nomad visa. They have a profession liberal visa, which if you're a freelancer, you can apply for, but it's not a nomad visa. So to my knowledge, to this point. Okay. So for health insurance, Ishuel Charon. I pay about $100 per pay period, and assuming a pay period is every other week, you know, and then the employer is paying a portion of it too. So if you don't have an employer, I know I hear people saying I'm paying $600 a month for health insurance. $600 a month, right? So so there's that. And then for copay for a doctor's visit is $40 and up. So like the out of pocket in France is less than the copay, right? So that means there's a portion being paid by the insurance, right? Thanks for sharing that. Okay. And yes, it's every other week. The $100 is every other week. Gotcha. Thank you for updating it. All right, let's see what we got else here. Roughly $700 per month pre-tax, but it's for two people, me and my daughter. I also pay $190 for concierge healthcare on top of that. So you can see how it can be quite pricey. Thank you. All right. All right, here's another nice comment. Tammy Johnson, I just discovered your channel. I think it's amazing. Thank you. Please share how your life has changed since moving from the US to France. I think the biggest change in my life is what I believe is possible, right? And moving abroad is a personal development program. It's a personal development program. So whether or not that's what you're going for, you're going to get that. You're going to grow. You're going to learn a lot about yourself, what you're capable of, because you will be stretched. And that is, for me, I wasn't necessarily sure that it was possible for me to move abroad. So when I did, it was like, I did it. But then, that's the beginning, right? Then you have to kind of figure out how to make this sustainable, right? And so I was just living off of savings for a while. And then I decided, well, why don't I start a business in France? Starting a business is hard anywhere, but then in a foreign country, right? And so that expanded, what I believed I could do. And so now it's just been so empowering to see what I've done and to think, well, what else could I do? And I think the other piece of that is that I've grown in being able to put myself out there and knowing that while it was hard in the beginning, that what I'm doing and having other people see what I'm doing is important, because I can help other people start to have a belief in themselves that they didn't necessarily have or don't necessarily have, but still looking at me saying, well, she did it, well, maybe I can do it. So I think I feel more empowered, learning French, right? That was something when I was in high school and college, I just didn't believe was possible for me because my brother got the language gene according to my mom. But here I am speaking fluent French and now learning Spanish. So it just is just, I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think just the belief in myself and and trust in myself and the universe that things are going to work out for me. So I think that's the biggest thing, the biggest way I've changed. All right. So I can't stand that health, our U.S. health insurance is tied to your job. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't, for a year and a half, 2 years, till my French ex-boyfriend said, oh no, if you're a resident in France, you have the right to have health insurance. Because in my mind, it was like, oh, it's always tied to a job. It's not a right, but here it definitely is a right. Grits is similar to polenta. Is that how you say it? I don't know. I've never had polenta. But I'll take your word for it. I love these comments. Thank you. Thank you for sharing them. I love your channel. I just think you are so courageous to start a whole new life in another country. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. One other question that I did get when I was at that in-person meetup, was somebody asked me, how can we support you? Maybe we don't want to be a part of your coaching program. Maybe we don't need coaching. How can we support you? And so I recently, in January, got monetized on YouTube. And so That means, and I don't know how to do it, so I can't instruct you how to do it, but that means that when I'm doing live chats, when I'm doing live streams on YouTube, there is a feature called Super Chat, and that is where you can make a comment and your chat goes to the top, and you can make a donation, $1, $2, $5, whatever it is that you want. So that was something that people asked me, and I wanted to share that with you, that now that I monetize, that is a way that you can support me. All right. So, and yes, thanks to everybody for your answers. Yeah, so you have a sense now, Anne, of what we're talking about and why it's such a pain point for Americans. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that it's a personal choice, but I'll post this anyway. I would advise everyone to move to France. Less stress, more nature, good food, etc. I agree there, but I do think that it takes somebody who, some people might want to move to Spain or, some other place. And so I think it's a really personal choice. I favor France because, it feels like home to me now. But thank you for sharing that. You definitely love France as well. All right. Okay. I'm not sure where you made it back from. Made it back. Um, Patricia has shown a path worth taking. It's definitely for me, it was the right thing to do. I mean, it was the right thing to, forever, my mom would say, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, meaning that, oh, you don't quit a job if you don't have another job to go to. If you don't have a sure thing, you stick with what you have, even if it's not right for you. But, after my parents died, I realized that I don't know how long I have, and that I need to live for me, regardless of whether it necessarily makes sense logically, because that's how I lived the first part of my life. Well, if I do this, then this will happen, then this will happen, then this will happen. I would plan it out, and time and again, I'd have this master plan, but things didn't typically go as planned, and so I would maybe even go against my intuition, like with my first job that I knew I shouldn't have taken, and it was horrible for 9 months, and then I was fired. Um, After I started to see this pattern, I got to a point where I'm like, well, I did the logical thing those times when I thought I should do something else. Maybe I should listen to this intuition, even though it doesn't make sense. And I'm not necessarily sure where this is going to lead. Um, so I think getting in tune with your intuition, not necessarily throwing caution to the wind, have a plan, but don't necessarily listen to, oh, yeah, but how? Or the logical thing to do is, or a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, because I found that that wasn't true for me. Like if I hadn't done this crazy thing, I don't know where I'd be in the United States. I would not be, my friend Evie saying that she can see the joy coming through me. That it's something that is perceptible to her. That I don't necessarily believe would be my state and my state of mind. So, if you've got the goal, you've got this dream, follow listen to it, take a small step in the direction. You'll start to see ways that you can make it work, and go for it. Go for it. Thanks for sharing, Rough Rider. Let's see what we got here. Um, do you think that most people should try living in another country at least once? Well, I mean, I think that's a tough call. I was on the Expat Women Summit recently, and last week, and in one of the discussion groups, there were lots of other women who have lived in many different countries and who speak English with an accent. And one of the things that she and she lives in America, and one of the things she struggled with was feeling judged or not good enough because of her accent, or maybe that she didn't speak grammatically 100% grammatically correct. And I, was sitting in that discussion, and other people were saying, yeah, who had accents, foreign accents speaking English. And I was sitting there feeling so guilty. And I actually shared, I said, I'm guilty. Hopefully I did not make, the person or the people feel uncomfortable, but I was guilty of judging to myself in my mind, well, why can't you speak, proper English? And then I moved to France. And then I started speaking French, broken French. It's probably still not grammatically correct, but I get my point across. People understand me. I understand them. And I've got an accent, right? I don't sound French. Well, I don't sound French. So, in those moments when I was, finding my way with the language, I thought, oh, Patricia, how could you have been so judgmental? And so the question here is, do you think that most people should try living in another country at least once? I don't know the answer to that. I would say that it's powerful because it really changes how you view things. It broadens, like, if you've not lived in another country, you have a much more narrow view of the world because you haven't been exposed to so many things. So I think it's a great school. But should everybody do it? I don't know that everybody's cut out to do it, quite frankly. All right. Okay. Dion, having a hard time finding the right language course that fits me. Have tried several. Can you describe what you liked about Pimsleur? Okay. Yes. I'm actually using Pimsleur now, in addition to going to my Spanish class for Spanish, but I used it to learn French as well. So what Pimsleur is, it's audio, so it doesn't necessarily have the visual component to it. But what I would do with Pimsleur is it's a 30-minute lesson that I would listen to on my morning walk. So I'd get up in the morning, go on my morning walk, put my headphones on, and then listen to the lesson and repeat the prompts, right? They'd ask me to say something in French, and I would repeat the prompts. And there are 5 levels of it. And little by little, and the beauty of it is it has you speaking, right? It has you speaking, because like if you're in a class and you're just reading and writing, and maybe you're speaking a little bit, you're not necessarily getting that facility with speaking. So that's what I like about it. It puts you out there, makes you speak it. I also like that it's got this, what they call time-spaced repetition. So the first 2 lessons, maybe you're repeating the same things over and over again. And then the third lesson, maybe you add something new, right? And then, in the 4th lesson, it calls back something you learned in the first or second lesson, so that it's reinforcing what you learned. And for me, what I liked about it was that I saw that, oh my gosh, I remember they asked me to say this word or say this phrase, and I was actually able to just say it. Whereas, a week before, 2 weeks before, I didn't even know what that was. And so that there was something about that repetition and of it all. And it wasn't repetition, just boring, because at the beginning of the lesson, it talks about it has a story that they speak in French or whatever language you're going for. And then through the next part of the lesson, it has you, reconstruct that and learn that conversation. And so it just, I don't know, it was powerful for me because I could do it. I could multitask, task number 1, but it just seemed to kind of sink in very well for me. So that's what I liked about it. I think the downsides to it are, if you don't have if you don't have a book or you're not looking at it, you might not know how words are spelled. And I think when I got to France, which is why I decided to take an in-person class here in France, was I could say things but I didn't understand why I was saying things. Like I didn't know the grammar behind it. And I kind of like to know those things. I think it helps reinforce the learning. And so once I got that and became literate, right, I could speak French, but could I read or write it when I got here? No, not really. I think that's the downside. They do have reading lessons, but I never used the reading lessons, so maybe it's my fault. But that's why I like it. It gets you speaking, and I think speaking is, it can be so scary to speak a foreign language because you you're afraid of making mistakes, but this just makes you just do it. And nobody's listening, right? Well, maybe if you pass somebody on your walk, they hear, but at that point it was like, no, I've got to learn this language because I'm moving to France and I'm going to speak this language. So thanks for the question, Dion. Hope that helps. All right. All right. Rough Rider 757. Do I feel the south of France offers enough of the necessities to living like good doctors, excellent nightlife, ease of travel to train, planes, etc.? It depends on the city that you're in, right? Where I am, I feel like I have struggled to find. My first doctor was my landlord, and he was a good doctor. And then a year and a half ago, he retired, and then that was when I struggled to find a doctor who was near me, and not necessarily really that satisfied with the doctor I have. So I am looking at other doctors now. It depends on where you are. Like Montpellier is in the south of France, and that is a nice. There's I guess a good medical center there with really good doctors there, right? So I don't think you can just kind of say in the south of France. It depends on where you are. If you're in a bigger city, of course. In terms of nightlife, when I was in Perpignan, I didn't really go out, but I didn't get a sense that there was a booming nightlife there. But again, that's a smaller city. Maybe if you go to Marseille, um, there would be. So I think the size of the place that you're in has a lot to do with that. Ease of travel to train, planes, etc. So Perpignan is pretty good. So when I was there, I was like a 3-minute walk from the train station, and I didn't know how good I had it, right? And then and they also have a small airport there. So getting places in Perpignan from Perpignan was very easy. Now I am 40 minutes outside the city, and so it's less convenient. This trip back was just it was harder because once I got to Perpignan, then I had to find a way to get to Sarre. And there's a bus that takes me, but that's just another leg on a trip. If I've flown across the ocean and then taken a 5-hour train to Perpignan, I don't really want to get on a 40-minute bus ride, right? So it depends on the city, and so I think that if that's important, those things are important to you. Look for bigger cities because that's where you're going to have those things that you're talking about. All right. Thank you for that question. I probably can't. Michelle Gaynor, can you speak about the differences in the towns in southern France like Sarre, Nice, Saint-Jean, Cap Ferrat, etc.? So, I think I know Sarre. I've never been to Nice or these other places. So it's really hard. It's really hard for me to speak about differences. I think it's like being in Virginia. I'll just take Virginia. Like you can be in Richmond, Virginia, and there's a one sort of vibe there. You can go to a the western part of the state, and it's much more rural, and you'll feel you'll have a different sense there. If you go up to Northern Virginia, there is yet again another vibe. So I think, and like the southern France, as I mentioned earlier, is like I call Nice the other south of France because I feel like it's people think of the south of France and they think of the Côte d'Azur, and we have our Mediterranean here too, but it's just very different, a different vibe. So, and that's what I can say about that. I think the best thing to do if you're considering this southern France is to do some research and then come on a scouting trip and kind of get a taste of these places for yourself so that you get that sense. All right. Huh. Stephanie Lilly, I understand if you retire to France, you need to do something regarding your money in the US in regards to inheritance for your heirs because of the 45% tax. What do you do in this case? Okay, so I laugh just because I just had a conversation with um, a financial advisor just yesterday, and I'll have another call with a financial advisor and estate. You know, they do deal in estates. They don't do estate planning, but they help you think through those things. And so I have not done anything yet. The person I spoke to yesterday, um, his name is Keith. I'll type it in the chat. And I think this is how he spells his name. He is a financial advisor dealing with U.S. expats, and he does estate planning. Oh, did it go? Yeah. And so that's what I would recommend is talking to somebody who has an understanding of how that will work, because I don't have that. I'm just finding my way in that area. But that's a really good question. All right. Family. You have. Thank you for answering. I've never been to Richmond, but I have family from Smithfield. Yes, I thought you were going to say, "Oh, I've tasted Smithfield ham," because that's what you say, Smithfield, and that's what I think of as a ham. All right, and went to both places. All right, so this has been a great live stream. If you have any final questions before I go, type quickly. Lots of wonderful questions here. This has been amazing. I hope that you got value out of this. My talking about the meetup there in October. And I don't necessarily have the date or the place yet. There is going to be another meetup that I will keep you posted for because it was a really nice event, and it will be someplace in Europe. And I would love to see you all there. Let's see. Okay. Tammy Johnson, I'm considering retiring to France by July 2024. Did you use an agency to help you find an apartment? If so, is there an agency that you would recommend? I did not. I know that people do because it can be challenging to find an apartment or a place to stay. I went the route that I went, and that I'm still in for now until I buy something, is I negotiated with somebody who has vacation rental by owner, and I negotiated a longer term rate so that it's affordable. So no, I did not. I just went, on vacation rental by owner, and that worked for me. But a lot of people want to have their own stuff in their own place, and I understand that. I don't, since I haven't used anybody, I can't recommend somebody, but they do exist. And it might be helpful, because in France, what I hear is you have to have this dossier and it's got to be a certain way. And in order to, for the owners to, feel comfortable renting to you, and you have to have some sort of insurance in case you don't pay and all of that. So, I can't give you any recommendations, but best of luck to you on that. All right. All right, Sharon, you're coming out in October. Yeah. Not even knowing where, but yes, I look forward to seeing you too. um, vacation rental by owner. I think you probably could get an apartment. I mean, get a house as well. I'm in an apartment. All right. Final questions? All right. I want to thank you once again, all of you who joined live and asked these wonderful questions. I want to thank everybody who is watching the replay. Thank you for joining. I look forward to doing another live stream soon, perhaps next week. I'm not sure, but oh, something's coming in last minute. Let's see what this is. Ariana VW. Not sure if you answered this, but how is the process of transferring to France, to a France location for work? I'm at a global company with different locations, but does having a job make the moving process better? I don't know. That is not my experience. I think that it depends on the company that you work for, how smooth that and efficient that process is. They would, imagine deal with the visa process, but like as I say, I've never done that, so it's hard for me to speak to that. It might be worth asking your HR, what the process looks like, and so that you can get some better insight into that. Since you are at a global company, and that that could be a way to have income and and help with the move process. All right, I got a lot of thank you. All right, this is the last question. I'll wrap up. All right. How difficult would it be to gain citizenship for a retired American that makes around 70K per year? Okay. So there is, I don't know the answer to that, right? I have not yet gone for citizenship. I am not retired, or when I go for citizenship, I won't be retired. 70K per year sounds like, that's pretty good. The French minimum wage is far less than that. So in terms of, financial resources, I think that would be a plus on your side. One thing that has changed, and I speak to this in the video that's coming out on Thursday, is that the language requirements have changed for different things, for citizenship, for getting a 10-year carte de séjour or resident card, getting a multi-year visa. Those levels, the language level, proficiency levels have changed. So like for citizenship, where it was a B1 level, now in order to get citizenship, you need to show a B2 level, and who knows where that will go, right? Whether it go up to the C1 level. But I really can't answer this question. I think financially, I think they would be happy to have you here, right? But I can't answer that question. Hopefully what I shared does help, though. All right. All right. Thank you, everybody. I will see you on the next live stream. And once again, thank you so much for your support. And I appreciate you. Take care and have a good rest of your day or night, wherever you are in the world. All right. Bye-bye for now.